Kurt Till It Hurts. I'm Ben.
And I'm Kurt.
And a lot of changes.
Yeah. Some big changes.
Some big changes behind the scenes.
On the old B and C Till It H.
B and C TIH. What happened to you last weekend, Curtis?
I got married.
Oh, congratulations.
Wait, you want to hear my... No. I was going to tap my wedding ring on the mic, but it's got a poof on it, so...
Oh, yep. That's not going to work.
At least the poof works.
That's good to know. There is no losing proposition coming out of that.
And you, Ben?
And me, I'm going to be a father.
What?
Next March. We're early stages of pregnancy right now.
That is
my wife and I.
Insanity.
It's very cool.
I was a lot more excited when you told me the first time.
Yeah, it's cool.
I don't want you guys, you listeners, to think like, yeah, that's cool, Ben, baby, whatever.
Yeah,
like,
whatever. That's fine.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's like I've had a week and a half to start processing it, but I think it's just going to be a lifelong. Oh shit, I'm a father now, or gonna be, or on the way, on the road. But
that baby is the size of a grain of rice right now.
Grain of rice, maybe even a little bigger. We're towards the end of the second month, so. I mean, I can check my my book.
I was gonna say there's probably an app that tells you.
Oh God, yeah.
I think like every day what it is as big as.
It's like what is it as big as, and what is it doing right now?
Yeah.
Like what's it focusing on? That's what I like to think about. But I just want listeners to know, and Kurt, I'm sure you agree, things aren't going to change around here. It's going to be pretty much exactly the same,
but better.
Right. Better every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, what are we talking about today?
Planet of the Apes, the new trilogy. So, we should probably start off by saying that this is going to be pretty spoiler heavy. So, if you haven't seen War for the Planet of the Apes, you may want to watch it, or just acknowledge that you don't care that we're going to be talking about it a lot.
Yeah, maybe we should start with like our general feelings about all of them, and then we'll say like when we're going to get into spoilers,
sure.
Just in case there are people who want to know like, all right, are these worth going to see? Are these not worth going to see?
Okay.
What's appealing about them? But we'll get to that after our check-ins.
I was just going to ask if we wanted to do a media check-in, or
Heck
if
yeah.
our big news went over.
No, I mean I was trying to bury the lead a little bit. I was trying to like the baby thing, like that's whatever. But I beat Nier Automata last week, so like finished.
That is some news.
That is crazy.
I just realized I don't have my glasses on. That's going to make this whole thing a challenge. Not that I can't see, but just knowing they're not on, now I'm paranoid. So you beat Nier Automata.
I beat Nier Automata. I finished it. You know what? It's fine.
You ever going to play it again?
Nope.
Good.
Actually, this is spoilers for Nier Automata. I'm just going to say that flat out. At the end of the game, it actually gives you it kind of encourages you to help another player who's having a hard time in the game. It says like, all right, are you ready do you want to give some help, give a helping hand to another player who's at a difficult part of the game? What you have to give up is you have to delete your save file. So I deleted my save file. Never going to play that fucking game again. I'm not going to play it from the very beginning.
What does it do to help another player?
It just like puts a little... If a player is dying over and over again, it'll say like, "Hey, do you want to accept some help from my Steam name, fucking whatever my Steam name is?" And then you can say yes, and then an extra little person comes in and helps that player out.
So you made the ultimate sacrifice.
I made the ultimate sacrifice. I deleted my save file. It tries to like make it seem like it's a really like rough thing that you're doing. It's a save file. It's like whatever. But it's like, oh, you worked so hard to unlock chapter select. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to give that up? You unlock debug mode. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to give that up?
I've never been more sure that I never want to play this game again.
I never want to play it. Nier Automata, very interesting game. Not a lot of other games like it. In the indie space, there are some other games like it. But as far as big budget games that, like you were mentioning last week, it looks good. Like the graphics are pretty advanced. You're running around in third person in a big 3D, fairly well designed world. The writing is decent as well. And not like decent compared to other games. I mean like decent compared to all other writing. Like it's decent kind of novel writing even. Watch a video of it. I wouldn't really recommend playing it unless you're very into kind of Japanese culture. Like I am.
Yeah. I happen to be.
Like I happen to be. So yeah, Nier Automata is cool. I've been playing a game called Anodyne as well. Have you heard of this, Curtis?
I have not.
This game came out in like 2013. It's an overhead. Did you ever play Zelda Link's Awakening?
Yes, I did.
On the Game Boy. It is sort of like that. Like it has individual screens that you're kind of navigating through from an overhead perspective. You play a character called Young, who is going to all these different places, and you're trying to fight the darkness. That's the overarching plot, but the specifics of it are what make it interesting, because the characters don't talk like you'd expect them to talk. And I'm going to have a hard time describing this, but okay, for example, there's one of the boss characters. You know how bosses usually are in these games. If they talk to you, by these games I mean like Zelda action RPG type games, if they talk to you, it's going to be something like, "Wahaha, I'm the most powerful beast. I am the owner of this dungeon, and I'm going to kill you."
Mm-hmm.
This boss comes in, and it's like two rocky hands on either side of the screen and like a big mouth in the middle of the back of the screen. And he says, "Oh, Young, you still playing Nintendo, I see. When are you going to grow up?" And then you fight him. And then when you beat him, he says like something, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but something to the effect of, this doesn't mean you don't have to like go outside and talk to people. So it's like, it's tonally, it's really weird, really surreal. There's some good abstract art type stuff going on in the visuals. Like overall, the art is really good as well. Some of those great moments where you spend a long time climbing up some cliffs, and then you reach the top and you see like a vista behind you, like a kind of like Death Mountain in Link to the Past, or whatever the Death Mountain equivalent is in Link's Awakening. So yeah, Anodyne, very good game so far. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm also playing a game called Hollow Knight. This came out in February of this year of our Lord 2017. And it's from the genre that is often referred to as Metroidvania. I don't really like that genre description because it's like taking just two games that people think typify this genre and making them the ultimate, like, these are the ideal versions. I don't know. I think we can do better than that. They're like open world, side scrolling. You can go in any direction, but you have to unlock certain key items to get to certain areas. That kind of game.
Okay.
Which I understand you've been playing one of as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were going to talk about your Metroid adventures.
I actually have been I have been up to so much media stuff in the past 2 weeks that I'm having like a hard time. Like, what do I talk about? But yeah, I've been playing a little Metroid Fusion. Never been a huge Metroid fan. But this, yeah, I kind of like that one. It's like, it's easy enough where if I don't get stuck and like discouraged, and but I probably won't play much more of it.
You don't think you'll finish it?
Probably not.
How far are you?
I'm in the third sector. I don't know.
Have you been the one thing that I think Metroid Fusion does that not many other games do is the like SAX. They have kind of like Nemesis in Resident Evil 3. There's like this super powerful single enemy that follows you around to different places. Yeah,
I have encountered that once, and I thought that was actually really cool that you actually just have to like hide and
it's like
wait for her to leave.
It's legitimately scary.
Yeah.
At least it was to me when I played that game when I was like 12. Yeah. It's like it's scarier than a side-scrolling game usually manages to be.
Yeah. What else? Christ. I started reading a new book, which is uncommon for me. There's a new book about the Wu-Tang Clan that came out. I talked to you about this on here?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, it's called Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, and it's kind of it's just about their whole one-of-a-kind album fiasco that happened a few years ago.
Okay.
So, but it's written from the perspective of somebody that I don't trust them to be like honest. So it's as I read it, I'm like, I think this is just as much bullshit as everything else about this album that I think is bullshit.
Who's it written from the perspective of?
One of the it's a management type person, something that in the kind of like an executive producer, I think, like, but not that. Just a person involved in the handling of how do we make one album and sell one copy of one album.
Huh. So, and you're skeptical of them?
I am, because I think the whole thing is, I think that they kind of lied about what it was from the beginning, and the whole thing is kind of bullshit, and then it kind of came out after they had sold it, and now they're just trying to, like, pack on lies to, like, try to give value to their story, which I just don't think is true.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? I wasn't there. And then what else? Yes, I watched. You know what? I watched Jaws for the first time in my entire life, and I thought it was incredible. I was pissed at how good I thought it was, because I've been putting it off for years, because I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's great. It's the first blockbuster. Like, cool. I'm sure when I see it, it'll be fine. But I'm not in a hurry to see it. And I watched it, and it was really good. I was pissed at how good it was.
I gotta watch Jaws.
You never seen it either?
I've never seen Jaws.
Oh, yeah,
either.
we talked about that.
Yeah, I think we were gonna do, like, a whole thing about it. We should. We should still do a whole thing.
You should watch it. It's pretty good.
It.
And then I watched The Void, which was a horror movie from last year that I'd really been wanting to see.
I've gotten recommendations from all directions on this movie.
You know what? It was okay.
Really?
And I think I might be in the horror minority of that. I think it had some really cool visuals. I think that's basically it. It was a really kind of blah story with some really cool visual stuff. A lot of spooky, culty looking type stuff that is always... Triangles are cool. That's just all there is.
I love triangles.
Shapes painted on the wall for you to worship in front of are just cool. That just looks cool. But
we all love those.
A lot of body horror in it. But I feel like that's probably enough. I bought a Sega Genesis. I don't know how I have done so much in the past 2 weeks. Like, I feel like a decent person would be like, oh, well, I actually got married, so I've been really busy with everything involving that. No, I've read books, I've watched movies, I've played video games.
That's what happens after you have a wedding, is like, oh, okay, now this thing that I've been, even when I wasn't working on it, I was worrying about it.
Yeah.
And now it's gone.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point. I'm just, like, mentally free.
Your brain space, your processing time is freed up finally.
I can actually just watch movies in double speed and still retain it all because I'm not distracted by anything.
Right. Your super brain is back.
Yes. So that's it for me, I guess. Maybe if I continue to do any of those things, I can talk about it more. Or if any... I was going to say, if anyone wants to hear more of my opinion on Jaws, I can't fucking imagine why anybody would want to hear me talk about
if
Jaws.
anyone wants to hear more of Curtis's opinion about Jaws, wait about a month, and we'll probably have an episode out about it.
We're running out of ideas quick.
Yeah.
So let's get into Planet of the Apes.
Let's do.
So, okay. So do we want to... You said we should talk about our initial thoughts?
General opinions.
Okay, and then...
Are these movies worth watching?
I think that this trilogy is probably the best movie trilogy that has been around in at least 10 years. It's
better than Lord of the Rings. Easily. For me.
I mean, for me, I would say for me personally, this is a Quentin Tarantino thing where I'm like, I know Pulp Fiction's the best, but Kill Bill is my favorite.
No, that's not even true. Kill Bill's better than Pulp Fiction. We determined this scientifically, Curtis. You gotta trust your gut.
You
gotta believe in
Planet of the Apes franchise
those
is better
wacky
than Lord
opinions.
of the Rings.
Hell yes, it is.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings has aged kind of poorly, to be honest. Again, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a episode about Lord of the Rings. Just write all these ideas down.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best things I've seen in a long time. Each one, I think, is incredible, and each one is a little bit different, so it doesn't get old or feel stale. There are it's just a lot of attention paid to small details. As you watch the trilogy unfold, you'll see symbols or things that are shown to you that are references to earlier things in the film that you had no idea were foreshadowing, and just really impressively written. It feels like, despite how the titles are, it feels like it feels like Lord of the Rings, where the whole thing was written before they made it, which it wasn't. So
It seemed like they had a story arc in mind. It
Yep.
seems like when they made Rise of the Planet of the Apes, or when the writers wrote it, because I think the same writers were involved pretty heavily through the whole series. I don't know if they directly are credited with the screenplays, but it's like Amanda Jaffe. I might be getting their names mixed up. It's like Rick Jaffe and Amanda Silver, something like that.
Yep.
They're the writers on the first movie, and then I think by the third one they're executive producers. But it seems like it's like their story that they had in mind from the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they're awesome movies. They are they're unique. They tell a unique story. Maybe not a new story, but it's a very classically human story. They're also funny as shit.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of critical of modern movies.
I find one of my most enjoyable aspects of it is that it stays in that area where it's both a reboot and a prequel. Like, it kind of serves. If you wanted to watch, if you just watch these three movies on their own, which you have not seen the originals, correct? Aside from the first one.
I saw the first one, but I don't remember. I don't have any kind of connection to it.
Yeah. So if you just watch the new ones, like you have, it's a great trilogy that tells a great story. If you've seen all of them, like I have, it serves as a, like the same as for you. It's just a great trilogy, but it also is a great prequel. I mean, it's something that Star Wars isn't, where you're like trying to tell yourself the first one, the new three don't suck because you're like, it leads into something cool. It's not like that. You can really just enjoy it on their own or as part of a, 8 or 9 movie
Jesus.
franchise.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we talk about each one individually? Or
yeah.
Okay.
After this point, we're going to open the spoiler floodgates. If you have any interest in these movies, don't listen any farther. Just go watch them. You're gonna like them.
I'll give you. We'll do another spoiler warning when we get to the war, because at least that one's new. I'll give you that if you haven't had time to see that one yet.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about each of them individually.
Okay. So, Rise for the Planet of the Apes, we saw it together, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, in college, good old dollar movie night.
Good old dollar movie night. No, we saw that at the Oxford flagship.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Possible.
I'm pretty sure.
We've actually seen quite a few movies together. I'm now realizing
we have. Yeah, you kind of stack them up next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, we did see it together. And I don't think my opinion has really changed that much about it over time.
Neither has mine, but I think we have different opinions about it.
We do. I think Rise of the Planet of the Apes is mostly like kind of a mess. I think it's kind of flatly directed. Like, I don't think Rupert Wyatt, the director of this film, did a great job. Yeah. I think that James Franco turns in a pretty good performance. I think John Lithgow is on some weird shit. Like, John Lithgow has a bizarre performance in this movie as an Alzheimer's sufferer. But the one thing that still stands up is Andy Serkis's performance as Caesar, and really all the performances of the apes in Rise of the Planet of the Apes hold up. The effects, there's a big jump in the quality of the special effects from Rise of the Planet of the Apes to the second one, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Definitely, especially, I mean, with everything, but the first thing I noticed was just the texture of the fur of the apes.
It looks janky. Even without the comparison point, the first one looks janky. Especially Caesar, for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, Caesar looks weird and bald at points.
I wouldn't say that it's a flawless movie, but I still do think that it's my favorite of the three. Mm-hmm. And there are a few reasons for that. But I think, pros of the first one, I think I get behind the first one because it comes from a place where the errors made that set the story into play are very relatable errors. Like, it feels almost kind of like a Frankenstein, like James Franco's character.
James Frankenstein.
James Frankenstein is tortured by his own ability, and I think doing whatever it takes to help cure his father of Alzheimer's, is like one of those things where you're like, yeah, I can see why you would not stop giving up. You wouldn't give up in that endeavor. And I think it's one of the most. I almost want to say it's one of the most emotional of the three. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it because seeing the treatment of Caesar by humans who don't fear, the animals that are around yet. There's just a lot of mistreatment, and that bothers me. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't know. I just think that there's when as an example, in the ape pen when he yells no for the first time, that is truly chilling.
That's an incredible moment.
Like I can still when I watch it. If I'm watching it with somebody who hasn't seen it, I don't even watch it anymore. I just watch the person that's watching it, and I'm like, here it comes.
That if it wasn't for that moment, I might recommend that people skip Rise entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I really don't like that movie.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about that.
Let's dig into this.
Okay.
I think that the real core of this trilogy is the ape story. And I think that the strength of the human stories in the second and third movies is that they are parodies of human movies. Like the second one is a total parody of post-apocalyptic movies. The third one is like a weird Apocalypse Now parody.
Yeah.
But the first one has way more of the human material in it and way less of the ape material in it. To me, Caesar's story is the most important thing in these movies. So the more time we spend away from Caesar and away from things related directly to Caesar, such as watching John Lithgow happily walk out of his house, step into his neighbor's car, and just bash it back and forth while happy, funny movie music plays in the background, is kind of jarring and kind of puts me to sleep. But what else? I think Tom Felton kind of sucks also. He's the guy that's Draco Malfoy.
Oh, okay.
The guy that the handler of at the ape sanctuary that they're at. He gets both of the original movie references also. So, it's a madhouse.
Yeah, I was actually just going to point that out, that one of the biggest things that bothers me about that movie is his character is such a shitty dude that you just hate the whole time. It doesn't sound natural when he delivers those lines. It's clearly a reference to something else, because that guy has all of his lines where you totally believe that he's a shithead, and then I don't remember exactly, but the take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. It's that's not something a guy like that would say.
No.
It's a really awkward mouthful to yell out. That's a very old acting, stage type line. Yes. A big delivery.
Right.
So
Tom Felton is not up to the challenge.
Charlton Heston, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Especially in a movie from the 60s. But that was one thing that was really jarring in that movie. I will say, one of the most jarring parts of that movie for me is the whole antagonist with his boss and stuff. The whole thing is just money.
Oh my god, yeah, their dialogue is a parody of that kind of thing. He literally says his boss, so just basic structural stuff, James Franco works at a drug company, pharmaceutical testing facility or whatever. He's developing a cure for Alzheimer's.
We should probably do this for each movie.
We probably should. That we ever talk about, not just this one. James Franco is looking for a cure for Alzheimer's because his father has Alzheimer's. He tests the cure for Alzheimer's on apes. It turns out that the cure for Alzheimer's can engage neurogenesis or whatever, the creation of new neurons in the brain. Which cures his father's Alzheimer's, but if you give it to healthy apes, it makes them as smart or smarter than humans.
Yep.
And that's kind of the whole premise of this movie, is that this one ape, because it can get passed down genetically as well. Yep. So this one ape, who is the primary test subject, goes berserk one day, and they find out that it's because she was protecting her baby. Her baby is Caesar. Caesar ends up going home with James Franco because of a series of weird events that don't really make that much sense, but it's like, all right, we need him to be raised by a human for the story to work, so let's do this.
I think one of the hardest things to take in that movie is it takes place in either in the future or a slightly different present than our own, because in the first movie there's a TV that shows that the first manned flight to Mars has successfully landed. So they're a little bit... It's either in the future... It's
like a couple years ahead.
Yeah, and so I think, like, to have that juxtaposed with the idea of his boss being like, whatever's the cheapest way to kill all these goddamn monkeys, that's the way I want it done. Put a bullet in their head. It's like, in what world, especially one that's in the future of ours, is anyone going to be okay with you just shooting 12 monkeys in the head and then fucking throwing them in the dumpster?
Yeah, his boss doesn't make any sense. They have a conversation right at the beginning that is like classic exposition, where it's like, Will, that's James Franco's character's name, Will, you care about your dreams, but you need to understand I only care about money. It's like, okay, we've got the premise set up and we have the motivations of two primary characters set up. Yeah. Perfect, fine, show me more apes.
I really like how they even, when his mother, the ape mother, freaks out and crashes through Bright Eyes crashes through the glass window and ruins the presentation. His boss is like, oh, that's it. They're never going to go for that again. It's like, they don't want to cure Alzheimer's anymore because you guys let an ape out of a cage? Like, that does not make any fucking sense. No. Come back tomorrow after we've swept. It'll be fine. Right. Like, but no, the money is dried up. Kill all these apes.
Way.
Like,
you need these apes. Put these apes in a burlap sack and throw them in the river. We're done with them.
We don't want to cure Alzheimer's anymore. We hate these apes.
Alzheimer's is not worth curing. We need a war on the apes. Which is kind of how it ends up shaking out.
Strangely enough, that works.
Which, strangely enough, that's kind of the story of the rest of the series. That's why I stand strong that the human stories in these movies are not meant to be taken literally. They are parodies of shitty movies because the ape stories are so good.
They are.
Like, the emotions of the ape stories are so real and so, like, primitive and deep down to who we are as people.
In Rise, I still find some of the James Franco and his father, John Lithgow, I still find some of their stuff very touching. And
the piano thing.
Yeah. You know, that's great. And, you know, when he has I want to call it a moment. That's probably not the nicest way to put it. And he's
an episode,
and
he becomes aggressive.
His nurse won't look after him anymore. I feel for him. Like,
she says he belongs in a home. He's like attacking her because she tried to get him to whatever.
Yep.
Do something that he didn't want to do.
Especially, I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but when they're eating breakfast and John Lithgow's using his fork backwards and Caesar helps fix it for him. Yeah. That's touching to me. Like, that's like some deep level, like, oh fuck.
Well, like, but that's Caesar.
Yeah.
That's a Caesar moment. For me, that's a Caesar moment more than a Will's dad moment.
Yeah. And I will say that once Caesar leaves the home, fine. I don't care about humans anymore. But their interactions, I think, are great in the beginning with all, James Franco and his girlfriend and Caesar and John Lithgow. I really like all of their interactions. I don't care about the chubby sidekick scientist guy.
Oh my god, the guy who's like the first infected guy. Yeah, who's
patient
like
zero.
Yeah.
And I don't care about his boss there. That's just money.
Dreams are one thing, Will, but the profits are what matter to the shareholders. It's like you can write this shit in your sleep. It's the laziest fucking shit in the world.
So that I like. He goes to the rescue for apes and finds a way. What does he sneak out? And how does he get all the rest of the medicine, the chemical, to the? I don't even remember.
I forget. I think he sneaks back home.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Takes the canisters of it and then punctures them and then rolls them down
the thing.
Rolls them through the cages.
I find that really cool. It was just cool. And so then the apes are as smart as the humans, and they start to take over. And I don't really know what else we need to say about. What else should we talk about for the first one?
What do you think about like that big Golden Gate Bridge thing at the end?
I think that's really cool. There was a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think how to say this. There are a couple moments where I really like how they show how the apes kind of attack. Like, the first one is when the neighbor, that dickhead neighbor, who that unreasonably
Fucking
angry
neighbor.
dickhead neighbor.
Yeah, again,
like
he's like threatening Caesar with like a baseball bat because he came over and was like hanging out with his daughters or whatever.
So he's running away from Caesar, and Caesar's like in the trees, and it's fall, so you can't see anything but leaves, and the trees are shaking. I think that is genuinely terrifying.
It's a great moment.
And I felt the same thing on the bridge when they show all the apes climbing along the top of the bridge, and people don't even know that they're above them yet. I thought that was a really good fight. I think that it only got better into the second and third movie. Sorry, I gotta adjust this. But I liked the foggy, Golden Gate Bridge, and thought it was a really cool scene.
Yeah, it's a cool set piece. It stands apart. It stands out as like a highlight of that movie. Another highlight, though, a couple more highlights from Rise that I just want to say. One is when Will, James Franco's character, shows up to the ape sanctuary and is going to take Caesar out. He's like, I need Caesar back at home. I really miss him. They're mistreating him here. I want him back with me. And he goes to the cage. They open up the cage. Caesar takes a step out. James Franco's like, come on, we're going back home. Caesar looks down and sees the leash in James Franco's hand and steps back into the cage and closes the door on himself. Fuck, that's a great moment.
Yeah.
That is a great moment. That, like, absolute, that rejection of humanity.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the biggest things that sets it off, is just that realization that, even if this guy is cool, he represents this whole world that I can't live in unless I want to be wearing a collar and hiding in an attic and have everybody be afraid of me. And it's pretty hard. There's a lot of like tearjerker, like, swallow the lump in your throat moments in all three of those movies, where especially where you're a human and you're watching shitty humans and you're like, man, humans are shitty. Like, I'm trying to think if there's any other highlights from that one. I mean, like I said, it's arguably my favorite one, so you'd think I'd be able to think of some, but I really like, as I was mentioning earlier, the symbols they use, and I really liked when he used the chalk to draw the window sill in his on the wall in his pen, and I like how that kind of became his symbol throughout the whole franchise. But yeah, I mean, I think that
the way he like rallies the apes around him, the way he because this is the movie where he challenges Rocket. Rocket is the initial, and that's one of the great things about these movies, is that the ape characters stay pretty constant. Like, the major ape characters stay pretty constant throughout all three. Caesar obviously is in the first one. Maurice is in the first one, and is the first other ape, I believe, that Caesar ever talks to.
Yeah, even before
he even makes the rest of them smart, because Maurice was a circus orangutan, so Maurice knows sign language. So they communicate. They have like a little basic communication, and I think they help each other out a little bit. And
I believe Koba's in the first one as well.
Koba is in the first one. Koba is when they develop the new Alzheimer's cure, and then that's the one that ends up going rogue and becoming like the death plague that kills most of humanity. Koba's in the first one, and Rocket, of course, who becomes very important in the third movie and pretty important in the second one as well. There's one other character who I can't remember, but yeah, a lot of character crossover, and getting to see the beginnings of those character stories in this first movie and following them all the way through the third movie in many cases is like a great experience.
One of the most impressive things that the first movie added to the franchise was when you watch the original franchise, it's really cool, but you kind of have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit. There's a lot of things like you just have to ask questions like, how did these apes hyper evolve so fast? Like, that's a legitimate question. And okay, so let's say they did hyper evolve and they're now as smart as humans. That's cool, but we still have like guns and bombs. Like, how did they really take us over? And I think the simian flu that the first movie introduces is a perfect way to answer that. Oh, okay, so the same thing that made the apes smarter is what killed humans. Like that. Okay, like I think that they did a great job of just like answering that just well enough for you to be like, oh, sick. Okay, that makes sense. Like, let's move on. Like,
right.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't say the first one is flawless. There's definitely some exposition that's kind of shoveled into your face, and you know the CG made leaps and bounds even from the first to second one, like you said earlier. I still like it a lot. It's probably the one I would watch the most, honestly. Yeah. I really find it enjoyable. But that might not mean much because the second one was, I believe, is looked at as the best and made the most money, and it's actually the one that I like the least. Huh. Are we ready to get into that one?
Absolutely. Let's move on to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
So with Dawn, as the first one ends, we realize that the simian flu is killing humans, and
the apes have kind of had this standoff on the Golden Gate Bridge, and at the very end of the first one, they retreat into the Muir National Forest.
The Redwood Forest.
The forest by San Francisco in California. They move in there, and when we get to the second one, we discover that they have a functioning community that they've built up. They are hunting. They are like building houses. They're coming up with laws.
Seeing apes ride horses is cool. Like
I love it. I love that because it looks as awkward as it would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have little fringe groups of humans that are trying to survive in this new apocalyptic world.
You find out through the course of the movie that they had a lot of trouble because all the power, all the electricity went away. And there were some dark times where humans were essentially just acting like animals, right? Because there wasn't any power. Everyone was killing everybody else, and they were... I don't know if that's really how that would happen, but within the context of these movies, with the version of humanity that exists in this new Planet of the Apes trilogy, that is what happens.
The first step for them to become humans again is to get electricity, because that is what sets them apart from animals.
Right, in their minds.
Yeah.
That little aspect of civilization is what is necessary to keep everybody from rioting and acting like the way that they think animals act. I think that animals comparison is something that carries through the second movie. The humans are worried that without the civilizing strength of their electricity, they will revert back to an animalistic state. Which, of course, is crazy because actual animals, right, very smart animals are living in the wild together with no electricity, and they're doing just fine because they think communally, and they all work together to live in this village together.
That's one thing that I find strange about the second one, where they really kind of pound in where these humans are like, these are animals. Like, and I'm not exactly sure, like, on one hand, I'm not exactly sure how much they know about the apes. Like, do they know that they have houses in the trees?
They've been beaten down by anti-ape propaganda because of all the simian flu stuff. They were a helpful scapegoat. The apes were. To prevent people from finding out that humans developed the disease.
Yeah. So they... Shit, I don't remember where I was going with that. But they basically realize that to get power back, they have to get this dam running again, which means they have to go through the home of the apes.
Yeah, the territory that the apes have claimed as their own.
And so I think in this one, I think the strongest thing that I think works for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is I really see both sides of it in that film. Gary Oldman is great as a villain. He's never a vindictive villain. He's like, yo, we need electricity. We need humanity to thrive. Sorry. Like, this is how we have to do it. And I get his perspective on it, and I also get, the apes with just leave us alone. Like, even trying to work with the humans. There's a lot of... That is a consistent theme in this trilogy of humans trying to kill apes, and then the apes being like, just come do what you need to do. Just leave us alone. And then they can't. The humans have to.
Well, like, let's talk specifics, because
Sure.
what happens and what sets off most of this is that the humans come in and say, like, look, just let us work on this dam. And the apes say, okay, but give us all your guns, right? And then the apes break all the guns because they don't, like, apes at that point, apes don't use guns. Later in the film, apes start using guns, and it's kind of a fucking terrifying moment. But at that point, apes are still very anti-gun. They're fairly anti-violence. Like, their first rule is ape not kill ape.
Yeah.
Right? I love seeing Maurice teaching the kids, teaching the young apes about the rules that govern ape society at that point. Love it. Love that moment.
Is actually paying. It's acknowledging the original the original. I keep saying trilogy, but it's a franchise. In the original franchise, gorillas are kind of like the soldiers of the society. Orangutans are the educated. They're the teachers and the religious figures and scholars. So I liked seeing that where I'm like, oh, look. Like, he's the one teaching them stuff.
Right,
he's teaching them ape law. Like,
right. He's like, you know, dozens of years down the line or hundreds of years down the line, you could see what Maurice is doing morphing into kind of a religious class in ape society, which is something that I want to talk a lot more about when we get to the third movie and when we start talking about the series, these three movies as a whole, because they are saying a lot of really smart stuff about the development of society, and they're clearly fairly well read, like at least as well read as I am about that shit, which is not to say I'm any kind of expert on sociology or history, but I know a little bit. But what I was talking about, I can't remember what I was talking about. It was about...
We're talking about
the guns.
They
take the guns and they break the guns, but then it turns out that the guy who hates apes most, who they needed to bring along because he's the only one who knows how to get the fucking dam running. It's a little, like, convoluted, but it's a little contrived, I guess.
Is that the one that they
saying.
make stay in the truck?
The reason they make him stay in the truck is because he snuck a shotgun in.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what sets off, like, the hostilities, really, is the fact that this one person could not just trust the apes, right, to do what they said they were going to do, to just let them hate begets hate. Yeah. might be the message of these movies, right? I can't remember what got us talking about that, but that's a good moment. It starts from a very small seed of hatred. This guy just doesn't trust the apes, so he brings a shotgun along, and from that little seed it grows this big old tree of vindictive actions on both sides. I kind of disagree with you about it showing both sides.
Yeah?
I think the movie is very staunchly on the apes' side. I think that Gary Oldman is kind of a cartoonish villain.
You think so?
I do think so. I think Gary Oldman's performance is great, but, like, he knows that what he is saying is manipulating people into an anti-ape fervor, because he believes that the only way to keep his community together is to get that dam going, but also to unite all the humans, all those hateful, angry humans, angry about the world that they feel has been taken away from them. He wants to unite them against the common enemy of the apes. He's not to get political, but he's Donald Trump, right? That's what he's doing. That's explicitly what he's doing. This is a great kind of anti-fascist text, as is the third one.
Well, I don't want to give him as much credit as the example I'm about to use, but I almost interpreted him as almost like a Magneto, where it's like you're killing the good guys. These guys are the ones you know are good. You're killing them. I know you are obviously in the wrong, but given the circumstances, I almost see why you're doing it, and I still want the apes to win. But, like, I understand in the movie that need for electricity and to get your humanity back.
Do they need electricity, though? Like, that's the thing. They think they need electricity so bad, but what they really need is a set of social codes that will make them behave well, right? They need to enforce good behavior inside of their own community in the way that the apes do. It's maybe a little easier for the apes because the apes they haven't known an easier life. So you're taking these humans and you're taking them. It's still close enough to the beginning of the apocalypse that these humans have lived easy lives. They've lived lives of leisure, right? And now you're trying to take them and say, all right, what about without electricity? You can't live the life of leisure that you used to live. You can still live a good life. You can still live a life where you're focused on your community, you're focused on your family, you're focused on, your job in the world. But these humans just refuse to take that message. The humans refuse to take any lessons from the way the apes are living. And that ultimately is kind of their downfall, because all the bad stuff that happens is instigated by human actions.
Yeah.
I can't really blame humans for what Koba does later in the movie, because Koba's actions are his own, and Koba's, as they put it in the third movie, Koba's inability to let go of his own hate is his own inability. But humans did some really bad shit to Koba.
I was gonna say that whole thing does start with an abusive life,
right?
From humans.
But really, the ape community probably could have done more to help Koba.
Yeah.
In the similar way that, like, Gary Oldman has that great moment where there are a couple great Gary Oldman moments that I want to talk about real quick.
Sure.
Gary Oldman, first up, the one that happens first, is in contrast to a scene where all the apes are all talking to each other. They're having like a big community meeting, like they seem to have pretty regularly. And they're all talking amongst themselves. They're really worried about the humans. And Caesar hears them all kind of chattering, and he yells to get them to stop talking, because he has something that he wants to say as the leader. He's the leader of this group. He wants to make his decision known. He's heard what they have to say. He wants to make his decision known. So he yells one word. They all stop talking because they want to listen to their leader. This might be making me sound kind of fascist. I'm not trying to sound like a fascist right now. But it's a good moment for Caesar, because Caesar is a genuinely great leader. This is not to suggest that all such leaders are good, and Caesar's certainly not like an autocrat. He's not trying to make all the decisions on his own. He's really trying to do what's best for his community. Gary Oldman, on the other hand, in a scene right after that, all the humans in the camp are chattering amongst themselves, and the chattering rises. They're all really scared of the apes, and they all seem to hate the apes. And they're all chattering, and gets louder and louder. And Gary Oldman tries to yell at them to stop talking, but it doesn't work because he's a weak leader.
Yeah.
Right? They don't respect him. They don't want to listen to him. So it's like a 30-second kind of almost slapstick comedy scene of him like yelling, and then he gets up higher and he tries yelling again, and then someone hands him a bullhorn.
Yeah.
And he has to yell through the bullhorn several times before people even stop talking to each other to listen to him. It's to me, the whole human side of this movie is about the breakdown of human civilization and the rise of something better, of something that actually supports the personhood of the individuals who live within it. That is to say, the ape society. Now, there's all kinds of stuff people could lodge against me about primalism, primitivism, noble savage type stuff that has been really ugly in books and movies for a long time. But I don't think that it's innocence that makes the apes special. I think that it is simply that they live as a community in a way that the humans in the post-apocalyptic camp don't. Anyway, the other great moment that Gary Oldman has is, it's like when things are starting to fall apart. I can't remember exactly when it is, but things are clearly on a downhill trend. And he's sitting up in his room, and he looks at a picture of his children, and he starts crying. He breaks down into tears. Clearly a wall comes down around his emotions, and he's showing us as viewers what he actually feels and what actually motivates him. And he's all alone in that moment. If he had felt comfortable talking to somebody in the camp about his children, about what happened to them, whether they were killed by the simian flu or killed by rioters or people during the bad times without the power. I'm not sure. But either way, he lost his children. He wants to go against whatever took his children from him. But if he had been able to talk to somebody about that, if he had not felt so isolated, then I don't think he would have made the anti-ape decisions that he makes in this movie.
I think one thing that sticks out to me is I think Caesar, with his methods of putting the community first, I think that a lot of problems, like it's almost too far on that spectrum where the humans are kind of painted as selfish and they just want their old lives back, even though they're never going to have. Even if you have electricity, you're never going to have what you had before.
Even if coal comes back, you're never going to have what you had before. Trump, Ozarks.
And I think where Caesar is always looking for the community as a whole and the best thing to do for the community as a whole, that there's a lot of these problems might come from there not being enough of an emphasis on the individuals of the ape group. Anytime somebody disagrees with him, whether it be Koba or his son, who's his name,
Blue Eyes.
Blue Eyes.
He's named after Caesar's mother.
There's never any. Caesar doesn't talk much. He's pretty stoic. He's a great leader, but he definitely acknowledges that he's the leader. And I think a lot of the dialogue comes back on the don't talk back to him. He's our leader, and I'm the leader, so this is what we're doing. Don't question it. And I think that in the same way, and this sounds a little corny to say, if Koba had someone to talk to,
yes,
or if somebody had listened to Caesar's son, then they may not have defected in such a harsh way where they felt like they weren't being heard and they were right,
Caesar even has a moment where he acknowledges that, which I really love, because there's no equivalent moment on the human side for this. There's a moment where Caesar says, I think it's in this movie, it might be in the third one, where Caesar says, I didn't know how much pain Koba was holding inside his heart.
Yeah.
It's a simple acknowledgement. It's the kind of small but very human acknowledgement that the apes are great about in these movies. That's why one of the reasons I love the ape story so much is because it's all about these little moments that you have where you just have a little realization about something. It's like, oh, I guess I never thought about it, but I didn't realize that he was so angry and was carrying so much pain around on his shoulders. And it kind of helps explain why Koba does what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Very well written.
It's a great movie. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Excellent.
I will say two of the strongest things about Dawn are the soundtrack, the score. It becomes much more Planet of the Apes-y than in Rise.
It's way more distinctive. Rise just kind of has like a generic movie soundtrack.
Yeah, and Dawn incorporates a lot of like tribal drums and like xylophone type percussion instruments, and that's very reminiscent of the original. It matches
the woods that they're living in.
Yeah. And the other great thing about Dawn is that a lot of time, and it almost goes against what is conventionally done in a lot of movies. In a lot of movies, less is more. I'm thinking of like Alien. They cut the scene where you see the entire alien because it looks fucking weird when you can plainly see in broad daylight what the alien looks like. And what I really like about Dawn is they do the opposite of that, and it works. That war scene towards the end of the film in the third act is so well lit and finely detailed, and there's slow motion, but it's done tastefully, and it's just a great war scene where you really get to see anything you would want to, and it doesn't take away from any of it.
I didn't want to see any of that. I felt that war scene really took it out of me. Like that, it's heavy. It's up there with other. The Vietnam War stuff really starts coming in heavily in War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
But there's already some shades of like great Vietnam War cinema in the battle at the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Specifically, a moment that like got me hard is when they're all fighting, and you're just seeing apes get like decked left and right. You're seeing them get shot. I don't really remember any humans getting killed making a big impact on me, because like I kind of implied, I did not give a shit about humans at any point in any of these movies.
Even if you did, at that moment, which halfway through Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is halfway through this trilogy, and at that moment, there's no redeeming quality really left for humans at that point. You're kind of just like, okay, we are on. We tried more than once to make this work, and you people cannot make it work.
You just keep fucking it up. Like your hatred of each other, of yourselves, and of anything that's not like you is really getting in the way. The moment from this battle that I'm thinking of is there's a gorilla who appears to be like he's got one chimpanzee slung over a shoulder and another chimpanzee he's like holding the chimp's arm. Both of these chimps are obviously dead or close to dead, and this gorilla is just trying his best to get them off the battlefield.
Yeah.
He's not trying to fight, he's not trying to get revenge. He's got these two fellow apes that he clearly cares a lot about. They are his brethren. They're people he's lived with. And he's just trying to carry them to safety. And that reminds me a lot of some of the best like Vietnam War photojournalism that I've seen, of like when you're on the battlefield like that, the way you think seems to change. Your priorities come into stark contrast. Before the battle starts, you might be thinking like, if anyone kills my friend, I'm going to go after them and I'm going to get them back. But in the moment when you see your friend actually get shot, a lot of times, from what I understand, again, never been on a battlefield myself, but from what I understand, much of the time you just realize like, I care way more about getting this person who I care about to safety than about getting revenge. Yeah. And it's wordlessly described in just an image of this gorilla trying to carry these two apes off the battlefield. Wonderful moment. Yeah. Yep. Why do you hate this movie?
I don't hate it.
I know.
I just think that it's, I don't even. I haven't been able to compare the third one for nearly as long, because it was like 3 years ago that Dawn came out.
Yeah, every 3 years.
So I've had a lot longer to compare Dawn to Rise, and I just always liked Rise more. And I think that, I don't know, I think there's just a lot of, I think Dawn feels pretty futile throughout, and that doesn't mean that it's bad, because that's a big thing that's tough to, this is kind of a sidebar, and I was talking about this with my friend Mike the other day. That's a big thing that's kind of hard to grasp in these movies, is that just a movie doesn't have to be like happy for it to be good. Like Dawn or War of the Planet of the Apes can make you feel like shit, and that doesn't make them a bad movie. So sometimes you know, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but when I watched War for the Planet of the Apes, I was like, God, this movie's a fucking bummer.
That movie is crazy brutal.
And that doesn't make it a bad movie.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're watching it, you're like, am I enjoying myself?
Man, we should get into this. We're so used to, and hey, this is my nerd creds going straight down the toilet. We're so used to fucking feel-good Star Wars and Marvel movies that are just like, oh, you're going to hang out with your favorite characters, and they're never going to do anything that's too bad. Yeah. You know, nothing too bad's ever going to really happen to them, because the franchise is what's important. The continuing story, where none of these people ever really have to grow or change that much. They just keep going on adventures where there are giant space lasers at the end and shit. And Marvel seems to be kind of solving that problem a little. They seem to have heard the criticism a couple years ago, so farther movies like your Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther seem to be... Thor Ragnarok, is that the right one? Yeah. I don't know. The Taika Waititi one, the one that's coming out soon.
Yeah, with a Hulk in it.
Yeah, it has Hulk in it. That one looks pretty good, looks a little funnier. The Black Panther looks like a genuinely really fucking good movie. But when you go from that kind of overall very feel good. Like Rogue One is a movie where everyone dies at the end. Spoiler alert. But you don't feel too bad because you know they sacrificed themselves so that A New Hope can happen. What happens at the end of War for the Planet of the Apes? It's like, well, we're not going to get into the spoilers for that one yet, but you leave that movie with way more questions than answers about how you feel about what you just watched. The movie does not give you an easy option for how to feel about it. You really kind of have to like struggle and think about it and consider your own values when you're thinking about these movies.
Similar, I guess. I don't want to give, as much as I like War for the Planet of the Apes, I don't want to give it too much credit. But what it reminded me, possibly because a lot of the war, themes of War for the Planet of the Apes. God damn it, Kurt.
Themes of war.
I thought of Schindler's List, and that movie's a fucking downer it's the downer movie of all time, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's incredible. And so to be able to just convey those emotions to you and make you feel that way, those are great movies, but sometimes you walk away feeling like they're not great because you didn't have like an awesome time while you watched it. Mm-hmm. And I think that is kind of what happens in Dawn, which initially was probably why I didn't like it as much as Rise. But it's kind of similar to that. It's the Empire Strikes Back. It's like that's the low point. You're like, well, something's gonna, they're gonna do another one. Mm-hmm. And I just think probably the hopelessness of Dawn, of just trying over and over and over again to, find something to work with humans on, and humans just fucking it up. I think I liked in the first one more how it was just an honest mistake, kind of a series of unfortunate mistakes made by a few different humans that put this whole thing into place. It wasn't greed. James Franco wasn't making that serum to make a bunch of money. He was just trying to save his dad.
Right.
And James Franco didn't want anything bad to happen to Caesar. He loved Caesar. It just happened that way because of the environment that they lived in. And I think that left me with a much better feeling of how the whole thing started than the hopelessness and futility of Dawn. But maybe it will change, because now having the third piece of that franchise, sometimes knowing how it ends can really impact how the second one, how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm. What else about Dawn? I had some other stuff. Oh, the Koba stuff towards the end. Matt Reeves directed both Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes. Matt Reeves, it kind of seems like a great friggin' director. Like I love his style. It's maybe not the most unique style in the world, but it's a great pastiche. He clearly understands what he wants the audience to feel and how to evoke that feeling, and he has some really interesting framings for his shots sometimes. That's one of my complaints about Rise, honestly, is that Rupert Wyatt's direction is just kind of flat. He seems to choose the most obvious framing for everything that happens in the script.
Yeah.
Matt Reeves surprises you sometimes, and one of the ways that he surprised me is that Koba's arc at the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is a straight up horror movie. Like, Koba is treated as a slasher.
Yeah.
Like that moment, there's like the guy who they made stay in the truck, and it's like raining and there's lightning, and suddenly Koba is standing outside the window, and it's Koba, because Koba's been going around killing people. He's been going around shooting apes, right? I don't know if he has been by that point, but Koba's scary as shit is what I mean. And or like when he's at the bottom of the ladder and Caesar's looking down at him, peering over, and Koba just like lifts the gun up and shoots. He shoots Caesar, right? He does. He doesn't shoot Blue Eyes.
No, I don't think
I think he shoots Caesar in that moment. I'm getting a little mixed up.
He was kind of the Scar. I'm pulling Lion King references here. Mm-hmm. He was, he tried to be there to for Blue Eyes to be like, no, scars are sweet. They show how tough you are. Like he kind of tried to poison Caesar's son, I think. So I could be totally wrong, and maybe he just shot Caesar's son. But as I remember,
you're right.
He was kind of trying to bring him along the whole way.
Yes, and he shot Caesar because he wanted to turn the apes against the humans. He blames humans for shooting Caesar, and that riles the apes up enough that they go and attack the humans. Okay, yes, that's what happened. But yeah, the performance for Koba is incredible. The animation of Koba is incredible. The way he walks around, kind of going back to what we were talking about on Kill Bill, is so much of these characters are expressed not through what they say or even how they say things, but just through how they move.
Yeah. It gives that, and that's one thing too, that each ape kind of has their, I mean, they look differently enough anyway, but they definitely behave differently too. Like their mannerisms are different, and it gives a surprising amount of character to a group of apes.
Yeah. It's one of the great successes of this trilogy, giving so much character to these non-human characters.
Especially, for me to think about, with Rocket, who has a great character arc, you almost forget from watching Rise when Rocket is the leader of, how
he's the alpha in the sanctuary.
And he holds his hand out, and he's surrounded by female apes and everything. And I think they just do a lot to show you the growth of these characters that are not humans, right, in ways that make you respect them and care about them much more than you would if you were, despite the fact that they're apes, I guess is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. So that's Dawn.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else to say about Dawn?
Not off the top of my head.
Anything else that's really biting at us? I feel like we talked about Dawn for quite a while.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I love that movie.
It was really, really powerful. And I think that it definitely pushed toward it. I felt that there was no way to avoid. With Rise, there was kind of a lot of exposition thrown at you, like I said before, and how you mentioned, it doesn't really make sense, but he had to end up at his house with
these are the things that needed to be in place for the other two movies to work out the way they were going to.
Dawn was written so well that it feels like a very natural progression to the third movie, War for the Planet of the Apes. So I guess now we'll start talking about War. So here's your last chance.
This movie just came out.
Yep.
I highly recommend you go see it. Even if you don't want to watch the other ones, there's a little summary at the beginning that'll get you caught up. Although if you listen this far on the podcast, you've already heard more than those little synopses are going to give you. But go see War for the Planet of the Apes. It's a great movie.
Yeah. All right. So getting into War, we have. This was a hard movie to watch.
It's a tough watch.
It pulled a lot of themes from other war movies. Actually, coincidentally, not even knowing that War for the Planet of the Apes would borrow so many things from Apocalypse Now, I didn't even know that, and I watched Apocalypse Now a week ago. Yeah. So that was really fresh in my head, and I was like, "Oh man, okay." Yeah. And they do a lot of most of the movie takes place in an ape concentration camp. So there's a lot of
like half the movie, I would say.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people being held against their will because of this seemingly random thing that makes them different from the people that are in charge. Pretty emotional movie. Pretty hard to sit through the whole thing, but not in a. I don't. That's a bad way to phrase that, because I definitely loved the whole movie. But
there are moments when you're watching and you feel overwhelmed with emotion, just because of how well directed and how well written it is, and how fundamental the human issues that they're getting at through these apes, how fundamental those are.
So what are some of your shining moments from War?
From War for the Planet of the Apes. I love Woody Harrelson.
Whew. Yeah.
Woody Harrelson plays the villain, the Colonel, in this movie, and we could probably just start by talking about Woody Harrelson's art, because I think he's the most successful human character in all three of these movies. They figured out finally the right balance of like ridiculous parody and like really kind of genuinely scary dude.
Yeah, and
to
just
go with.
I think it's the first character in the franchise too that is just despicable, awful person. I mean,
no redeeming qualities.
There are a lot of bad characters in these films. You know, even from the beginning, his boss Charles is just, but it's like you were saying, it's just a parody. It's just money.
That's just my take on it.
Well, no, I agree with that. I see that where it's like the whole thing is forced into effect because this guy is hilariously addicted to getting money.
Greedy. He's like the Monopoly man.
Yeah. And you know, his neighbor is there are no redeeming qualities about his neighbor in the first one.
Yeah.
But it's played off so comedically that you're just like, what is that guy's fucking problem? You don't really care. You even feel kind of bad for him when he gets his finger bitten off.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But Woody Harrelson is just crazy.
Woody Harrelson, yeah.
I really like all the touches. You know, they're the references kind of to Apocalypse Now. He's just that crazy shaving his head.
Yeah, he is Marlon Brando from Apocalypse Now.
He makes everybody recite that chant in the mornings to like keep everybody like pumped up and kind of on the same page as him. They do a lot to play into the fact that he's an alcoholic, so you kind of just have this like guy that's just a awful, shitty dude that you love to hate him. Yeah, he
has that one really funny. I mean, I found it funny. My wife and I were the only people laughing in the theater when this happened. But when he has that long monologue where he explains his entire life story to Caesar and why he's doing all the things he's doing and what his impression is of the virus and what he thinks is going to happen and what he thinks of Caesar and all this stuff. And he says things like somebody questioned me, so I killed him too. Like this whole time he's like making his breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that really funny because it just kept going. It just kept going on and on and on. And the dialogue, especially between the apes, which becomes more and more prominent throughout the movies. Like I think Woody Harrelson's monologue might be the one big human moment in War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
The ape dialogue is so spare and so well written and so economical with how it gets across aspects of these apes' characters. Because I guess one thing that we haven't mentioned so far is that, especially in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, most of the ape dialogue is in sign language.
Yeah.
Which is a really amazing touch. Like, sign language is, let's say, underrepresented in film. And it's cool because you can... I'm not a sign language expert by any means. I would love to learn more sign language. But you can express things in a different way when you're using your hands to communicate.
I think the biggest thing that I enjoyed about the use of sign language is that somebody finally had the courage to make a movie where the people you rooted for weren't... I'm trying to think how to say this. The best example I can think of that doesn't do it is like Alien versus Predator, where we have to have humans involved. Nobody wants to watch a movie about two aliens killing each other. It's like, yes, we do. That's exactly what we want.
Sounds like a great movie.
It doesn't make sense that humans are here.
Right.
Right. So I really like that they make you have these feelings about characters that aren't human, even so far as they communicate in a way that most humans don't communicate. And it works very well, and you're still on board. And as long as you have the subtitles so you understand what they're saying, it's just another way that it separates them from being human. It is a reminder that you're not watching humans. These are apes. They're different from humans.
Right. But at the same time, even if their mode of communication is different from human speech, the ideas that they're communicating are still very recognizable to us. They're the same ideas that people have been communicating through art, through drama, and through philosophy and religion for thousands of years. These ideas about, hate and trust and fear and personal principles are to me the important things from these Planet of the Apes movies, which of course all comes to a head in the third one. I don't know, how else do we want to approach the third one? What are your thoughts on the third one?
I think that I don't know. I think I can't say too much. I guess I can't say too much about without kind of spoiling the third act. So I don't know if we should get to that.
Full spoilers. Full spoilers ahead.
I meant, not so much spoiling. I just don't know if we want to jump over everything.
I'm fine jumping over everything. We don't need to talk about it in chronological order. We didn't really do that with Dawn.
The biggest and most powerful thing, I think, in the third film is that as you hit this, you're learning about what's going on as the humans. As I'm jumping all over the place. So at the end of Dawn, they had called for human reinforcements to come and help fight the rest of the apes. And as the apes are finding this human camp, they're thinking to themselves, oh, this must be the humans they called to come help us. And as you learn more and more as the story goes on, the apes start to ask questions like, why are they building a wall? What are they trying to keep out? And you slowly learn that it isn't, humans are so awful that it's not just humans against apes. Humans couldn't even stay on the same side of each other against apes. And the biggest thing that I took from the movie is that during this final fight scene, you have humans fighting apes, but there are apes on the human side, and then more humans come to fight the other humans that don't even know that most of the apes are in a battle there already. And it just shows how pointless and it all becomes, and how kind of nihilistic war can be, where it's just, you guys are just fighting. It doesn't matter who's on what side, because clearly there are no sides, because everybody is on every side and everybody is fighting each other.
Everybody's getting killed the same.
Yeah. And I think
except the apes are trying to escape.
Right.
The apes aren't like fighting either side, really. The apes are just trying to escape from this shit situation that this one particular group of humans led by Woody Harrelson has led them into.
Yeah. So in learning that these aren't the humans, they're just bad humans. Even other humans don't like these humans. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, cool, they're coming to fight them. And then the humans that come to fight them see apes and are like, oh shit, we're going to kill these apes.
Yeah.
You're just like, what the fuck is going on?
No good humans.
And I think it was a beautiful artistic choice to, how do the apes survive? They take to the trees. They do what makes them apes,
right,
and what makes them different from humans, and they survive. And the avalanche comes, and it's literally a whiteout to just wipe the slate clean of everything those humans had done. And I think that made so much sense in the context of the movie, and was also so poignant to the point that they were trying to make, that it's impressive to me that they found that perfect middle line of like beautifully artistic and makes sense in a literal sense to it.
Right. It's like, of course, they were firing an insane number of like missiles back and forth at each other, like a really cartoonish number of missiles back and forth during this human-on-human battle. Of course that's going to trigger an avalanche. You're in the mountains of Northern California.
And you just, at the end, you just have a flat landscape of white, just a blank slate with just the trees left, with the apes in the trees. And I think that just worked so well that was the biggest thing I took from the movie. I think one of the other, this is kind of bouncing around again, but I really, really liked not only Andy Serkis's Caesar performance, but Steve Zahn did a great job as Bad Ape or whatever.
Bad Ape, yeah. Is that his actual like credited name, or is that just what he calls himself?
I believe that is his credit.
I don't remember them giving him another name.
Yeah, I'm looking on the Wikipedia page and it says Steve Zahn as Bad Ape,
Yeah.
a common chimpanzee who lived in the zoo before the simian flu outbreak.
Yeah, Bad Ape, who has never lived in a community of other smart apes,
Yeah.
right, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and Caesar is shocked to, like, how can you speak? And he's like, I listen to humans. He doesn't even
Yeah.
understand that he has been given this ability to speak. He just
Right,
he
he's
doesn't
just
realize
like, yeah,
his brain was turned on.
I figured it out.
Yeah. He gave a lot of... In a movie, that movie really needed some comedic
Yes.
balance in it. And he did a great job of kind of the innocent, silly, kind of kept pulling you along during all these tragic, hopeless events. Yeah. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but those were two of the strongest things in that movie that I think worked really well.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't even think there are any really like huge flaws.
I can't think of
Yeah,
any,
that
but
was
it's still very new. I guess it felt a little long, but it didn't feel inordinately long.
Yeah.
It felt like it was... They stuff a lot of story into this movie. It's like it is a classically epic movie. There's a journey. Like Caesar goes on a physical, geographical journey to get where he's trying to get, right? To find... I don't know. What do you think Caesar's emotional journey is in War for the Planet of the Apes?
So the emotional journey that something that I took away from this movie that I really liked, and I made a point to bring it up to you because of our Tarantino, our love for Tarantino. Revenge. And a lot of movies kind of, they treat revenge of like, you want revenge, and then as you get to it, you realize revenge isn't going to bring your loved ones back. It's not going to make your life any easier. And so the right thing, the quote-unquote right thing for the hero to do is to overcome that desire of revenge. And I think where, for these three movies, where they show what a great leader Caesar is, when he says, I'm like Koba, I can't let go of the hate in my heart.
That's an incredible moment. That's like the linchpin
Yeah.
of all three movies. Like the themes. It's so rare in modern movies where people seem to have forgotten how to write movies, where you build up to a peak emotional moment. That is the pin that holds these movies together. That moment. Without that moment, I don't think they would be... They'd still be good movies, but I don't think they would have kind of washed over me with the effect that they did. But sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I think that I enjoyed that so much because I think it's almost... You really get the best of both worlds, because you do get that validation of... Maybe this is saying too much about me as a person, but when someone is a bad person and does bad things, sometimes it feels good when bad things happen to them. And maybe that makes me a weak person, but I think that it was nice to see that reciprocated in a movie from a character who, for 9 hours of film time at this point, has been the just leader and the knower of the right thing to do. And you kind of get the best of both worlds, because when he gets to Woody Harrelson's his room, he realizes that he has contracted the simian flu.
That Woody Harrelson has contracted the simian flu.
Right, and he doesn't get that satisfying bloodlust, revenge of shooting him, but he still... So he overcomes it in a way, and he almost I think the way I interpret it is that he almost feels empathy for him, but that he still needs to die. And so he gives him the ability, because Woody Harrelson's pretty fucked. He doesn't want to live.
Woody Harrelson is drunk. Woody Harrelson seems to have realized that he was coming down with the simian flu maybe the night before, maybe in the middle of the night before the battle.
Yep.
And started to drink himself into oblivion. And I guess what we should mention is that the simian flu no longer kills people. By about the middle of War for the Planet of the Apes, maybe even towards the beginning, you start to realize that the simian flu is not killing people anymore. It has morphed. Movie magic, fucking whatever, like the science of that, I don't know if that really makes any sense. It's no longer killing people, it's taking away their ability to speak.
Yep.
It may be altering how they think as well, but you can't really tell because you meet like only a couple characters who have it. One of whom is the little girl Nova, who they meet, who doesn't have a name until quite a bit later in the movie, but she doesn't speak. And Woody Harrelson is clearly having trouble speaking in this last scene with Caesar.
If you decide to take it as these movies as the prequel to the ones that come after it, the original franchise, the humans in that movie do have they are mute, and they kind of have like a childlike playfulness and simplicity to them. Mm-hmm. So it kind of
humans have turned into apes have turned into humans.
Yeah, basically, and to the point where it's even kind of creepy that in the first one, Charlton Heston
has sex with one of them.
Has like a weird relationship with one of the.
I don't know if he actually has sex with her, but I remember there is a love interest in that movie.
It's at the very least, it is a love interest. I don't know if they actually have sex or not, but
he wants to.
He takes her to be his companion on this journey because he needs a female with him, and so yeah,
that's a creepy part of that movie.
There's a lot of creepy parts of that.
Is that character Nova?
Yeah,
I know Nova is one of the characters in the original Planet of the Apes.
I believe that's Nova.
And it's an interesting connection that she gets her name in this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, more of that like reboot / prequel.
Yeah, they pay a lot of... Oh, you know one thing that Preboot?
Yeah.
The one of the things that I enjoyed so much in War was some of the imagery with... Obviously, I can't show you over an audio show, but how the kind of symbol for the apes became the two fists put together because of
the ape alone, weak, ape together strong. And that's from Rise, right?
Yeah, so that
doesn't really even come up in Dawn.
No, and that's one of the things that's so great about this franchise is that there's just like, oh yeah, that means something to me.
Right.
Like they don't even have to explain again why. You just know. You recall it.
They trust you to remember. You don't need like a flashback. But okay, back to the scene with Woody Harrelson.
Right.
I also have some pretty complicated feelings about that scene. I think it's great that you get that the final confrontation between the main protagonist and the main antagonist of this movie is so like emotionally confusing, because in the moment where I guess to me the arc of Caesar's arc is what you might say, is trying to figure out whether or not he can live with this hate in his heart without resolving it. Because and it's kind of a hokey setup, but the Colonel personally killed Caesar's wife and child, right? One of his children, at least.
Yep, the oldest.
Blue Eyes, the oldest, his first son, his firstborn, and his wife were killed by the Colonel. So the rest of this movie, he's on this like vendetta mission to get to the Colonel and kill him. And at the very end, it almost seems like he's going to make the decision to not care about killing the Colonel anymore, to just let the Colonel keep living and to be satisfied with getting his apes, getting his people out of the bondage that they are in. But then he has that moment, and like Koba keeps appearing to him. Koba dies at the end of Dawn, but Koba keeps appearing to Caesar throughout this movie, saying like, essentially implying that we're not that different. You know you hate this guy. You know you want to kill him. Sort of like the Star Wars thing, you know, the evil emperor saying, "Yes, embrace the hate in your heart," or whatever the fuck. So then at that very end, Caesar has that line that we mentioned. I am like Koba. I can't let go of my hate, and he goes in to kill the Colonel. I felt bad for Caesar in that moment.
Yeah,
because he had been. It didn't seem like he even wanted to do the thing that he was doing. He just felt that if he didn't, he would regret it somehow. I'm not sure exactly what Caesar would say about why he did what he did, but that seems to be close, right? That he just feels compelled to, and he knows that he's not going to be able to let go of it in the long run. And then for him to get in there and for the situation to be so different from what he expected. Yeah. You know, the Colonel is laying there on his bed. He's dead drunk,
just helpless.
He's no longer an effective human being.
Yeah.
And he Caesar has a gun pointed at the Colonel. The Colonel grabs the gun and puts it on his forehead or puts it on his temple or his cheek or whatever. He wants to die. And Caesar gives him the gun and turns away. But it doesn't seem like Caesar gets any pleasure out of that.
Yeah.
It almost seems like a moment of mercy. It almost seems like Caesar comes around and realizes how empty his revenge would have been.
Yeah.
Or alternative idea, maybe he does get pleasure from that. Maybe he feels a regret that he didn't get the confrontation that he wanted.
Yeah. I think that it's maybe in the middle of that. I think he, how should I say this? I don't think he gets a strong sense of satisfaction from it, but I think he feels that it needs to happen. Similar to probably like Bud in Kill Bill, like she deserves her revenge, we deserve to die. He's not looking forward to dying, and I think that might be similar to how Caesar is. He's not looking forward to this guy dying, but it's the right thing that needs to happen because this man is a monster. And he does show him some mercy by letting him do it himself, and it's
or making him do it himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too.
Who knows?
That's one of the things. I mean, that's a fair time to say that there's a lot of ambiguity. I feel like maybe this movie says a lot about who you are as a person because there's a lot of like moral ambiguity that how you interpret it. It kind of exposes yourself to like,
and that's where it starts getting like really uncomfortable to talk about it because it's like you realize how many different ways this, and that's, to me, that's the strength of it. That's the strength of this film. You don't get that kind of shit in like big blockbuster movies anymore, even if you ever did. Like you don't get a lot of big blockbuster movies that are interested in making the audience feel this uncomfortable about what happens on screen. Yeah, and I think the scene with the Colonel is really like indicative of a lot of that. Shows off a lot of the best parts of this movie. Anyway. Yeah. What else?
This podcast is as much of a bummer as War of the Planet of the Apes is. I'm having a good time. But that was a hard movie to talk about.
This podcast is heavy.
You know what the worst thing is?
What?
That as heavy as this podcast is, pull the curtain back a little bit. We are recording this on a Friday night. Really nice day outside. I just got married. Ben's having a beautiful baby. We get to go to a big party tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is a real good day for us. You were probably listening to this on a Monday morning on your way to work. And that is a bummer.
Just want to apologize for our words and deeds.
This show is going to come out on Monday at 12 a.m. And you're probably going to listen to it when you... I assume we have diehard fans that obviously listen
immediately.
They wake up, they shut their alarm off, and they say, "Thank God, it's the other Monday. Ben and Kurt Till It Hurts is live now."
I don't have to do the cocaine that gets me through the other Mondays.
Yeah.
How about the ending of War for the Planet of the Apes? Let's end on the ending.
Okay,
because I think
that makes sense.
I think it's a great ending.
I was a little. So here's one thing that I don't know if I would call it a weakness, but it was one of the things that I found kind of hurtful about it was the whole movie starts to revolve around Caesar. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at it too selfishly. One of the biggest motivators for me wanting to see Caesar win is I wanted Cornelius to be okay, his young son. And the whole movie is Cornelius getting taken away from his father, and then they get back together, and then he gets taken, and they're just trying to survive. And I found it so disappointing that he finally rescues him and then dies like 5 minutes later. Like, that was hard for me to become so invested in wanting the apes to survive and get their I say family, but their community out of that concentration camp.
And they do seem like a family.
Yeah.
They treat each other like brothers and sisters. They all raise the children together. Like it's a really wonderful seeming community. They're reminiscent of what we might guess that early Homo sapien communities were like,
Yeah.
which is something that I want to talk a little more about later.
And I think, actually, I'm pretty sure this was, in fact, I know now that I think about it, this was not a thought that I had, so I just want to make it clear that this was pointed out to me by Mike, who I had been talking about the movie with earlier. As much of a bummer it is that Caesar dies and Cornelius now doesn't have a father after I was so invested in it, Caesar had to die to become that Christ-like legend, for his words to be passed on and not have Caesar elaborate on them or explain more. Or
now, is this something from the original movies? Is Caesar mentioned in those movies?
Caesar is a Christ-like figure in the
Okay.
original. He's the first ape that said no.
Right.
He was the first ape that spoke, and the first word he said was no in retaliation. To
So
being...
this is all stuff from that original movie.
Yeah.
I should probably watch that movie again.
The first one is fantastic. The first one is truly one of my favorite movies. It's a bummer to go into it knowing the double twist at the end, but there's so much. You'll get a lot more, I think. Not that you couldn't enjoy the new trilogy, but every name in that movie, in those franchises, is a reference to, Bright Eyes, Nova, Cornelius. Everything in those movies is a reference to something.
Because Cornelius is one of the main ape characters in Planet of the Apes,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
And, as is Nova. Yeah. So I totally spaced where I was.
So
going
that's
on that.
something that was pointed out to you, is that Caesar had to die
Yeah.
at the end of this movie to become the you said Christ-like. I'm gonna shift that a little bit when I carry off on this point.
So I think it ended exactly like it needed to. Caesar fulfilled his quest to lead these apes to safety, to undo the shackles that humanity had placed upon them, and I think and he gave them the society that they needed for them to take over, and it just perfectly leads into what could, the rest of the franchise that was made in the 60s and 70s. But anyway, so what's your take on the ending?
So it is a biblical allegory, but it's not from the New Testament. It's from the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh, also known as to Christians, known as the Old Testament. Caesar is Moses. He is a classically Mosaic figure, because people maybe don't talk about the story of Moses so much, but we all know about the burning bush, right? The God came down and talked to Moses in the form of a burning bush, or it's a little controversial what exactly that means, but a burning bush was involved, and the burning bush is a symbol for Moses. The story of Moses, like Exodus, right? He helps the Israelites escape from their bondage in Egypt, and he promises to lead them to the land that God has promised them. But Moses never makes it. Moses gets to the point where he can see Israel, but he himself does not get to enter Israel because he went against God's covenant in a very small way. I can't remember exactly what happens, but I believe God denies Moses the chance to get into Israel. The burning bush is a symbol for Moses because Moses has this burning motivation. He needs to get his people out of their slavery and into their new home. Similar to Caesar, of course. That's his main motivation through War for the Planet of the Apes, arguably through Dawn as well. But he gives into his hate, and then as a result of giving into his hate, he gets shot with that arrow, right? That would not have happened if he hadn't gone back up to the colonel, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Yeah,
I'm not fucking that up, right?
I believe that is the case, yeah.
So because of his lapse, because he, for one moment, it's not even a big, like, going against his principles. It's a very small, very relatable. I am pretty sure I would have, in the Caesar situation, I'm pretty sure I would have done the same thing.
But you're right, though. It's the one deviation of doing what would satisfy him and what's not best for all the other apes.
He acknowledges as much. If he was there to lead the apes, more of them probably would have survived that battle also. Because there's a little bit of unsurety. There's a little bit of confusion among the apes. Had Caesar been there with them to lead them over to the trees, then more of them might have survived. This is basic speculation. But anyway, because of that one lapse, Caesar ends up getting shot, and that's how he dies. Moses, basically. That's all I'm fucking saying. I don't know. Is that Caesar is a great modern Moses. Caesar is a great biblical allegory in that watching his journey gives us perspective both on the original text and on the way it can apply to our own lives. I don't know. I've been becoming a big Bible guy recently, but
one of the other things, I guess, I think it's safe to say we're kind of moving into the movies as a whole.
Yeah, the kind of wrap up. Like, what's the journey?
All of the Planet of the Apes movies deal with issues of race a lot, and the reboot, the pre-boot, is similar to the original franchise in that. And one of the most emotional things for me, just two of the points that I think that worked so well in War for the Planet of the Apes were you had the donkeys. You had basically the house slave apes that they joined the side of the humans because being a slave for the human was arguably, the privileges you got of being, working for them was, better than the alternative.
That whole thing is a little murky, and I'm not sure that it actually works that great for me, but I can kind of ignore that.
Yeah.
It's another thing like, well, it doesn't really make sense that Will would bring Caesar home and then all this stuff would happen, but you kind of need that to happen so that we can set up these great moments. I think that there are some great moments with the donkeys that kind of, they justify having a setup that isn't rock solid.
I definitely, the motivations were never super clear.
Yeah.
Cause in my opinion, the sides of humans and apes were still, the apes weren't down and out enough where I thought that it would have made enough sense for them to like jump ship or, you know what it was? They were the ones that followed.
They were the ones
Koba.
with Koba.
Yeah,
still, that doesn't make that much sense to me.
Afraid of what he would do, and
or they like hated him. It's not perfect, but it's good enough.
Yeah, and I think it worked well for me. Although now you're poking holes in my.
Sorry,
ship's not floating so well. You're poking holes in it. The other thing that I thought was fantastic about the movie was, I love a good villain, and I love to hate a character on screen, and I have to tell you, because Woody Harrelson he's so hateful and crazy, but he's so good that you just love him as a villain, and that's he's a villain you love, but that the soldier, that the one that ended up shooting Caesar, what a despicable, slimy little fuck
prick
that you just hate the whole time. Literally,
he's the toady.
Is given mercy. He's caught by the apes in the beginning of it and let go. Given the ultimate mercy. Given the final message of leave us the fuck alone, please, and runs right back and tells them where their camp is. Just over and over again, that character is given a chance to redeem himself and just never does. He's just completely despicable, and you just want to punch his face every time you see him on screen.
Yeah, he does have a very punchable face.
And I think that was one of the biggest things. I hadn't had a really good chance to bring that up yet, but that was one of the things that I couldn't get away from this movie without acknowledging.
Yes.
So now we have the franchise as a whole, although I'm pretty sure it's been pretty clear that they're going to do another one.
Are they?
I think it's been acknowledged that, hey, this is really fucking successful.
Yeah.
Let's do another one.
Let's keep doing them till they're bad.
Yeah. Which, it's one of those things where...
I really kind of wish they would stop.
I don't know if I wish they would, because I think they have... If they left it as it is now, they would have a fantastic trilogy, so strong that it would be hard to top it. But you have the original franchise, which overall is it's one of those perfect franchises that overall fantastic. A lot of hard moments to get through. There's a lot of weak moments in the original one. And I think that if you're remaking or rebooting that franchise, there are an awful number of, there's 5 original Planet of the Apes movies and like 4 of them kind of suck, like I love them all, but the first one is the only like mandatory viewing. So I think like if this is what you're paying tribute to, why not run it into the ground like they did, like that's what people like about the original one.
The fire rises.
There are 5 of them, and they're not all great, but they tell a cool story from beginning to end, and I like that aspect, and I'd be willing to watch more, even if they don't. I hope it doesn't get like as bad as Terminator, where there are more bad ones than good ones, but where the first 2 are 2 of the greatest movies ever.
Yeah, the first one's one of the greatest movies ever.
You don't think about the second one?
Yeah.
We're going to have to do a Terminator episode. God damn it, Ben. Don't twist my arm.
Second one's a great action movie. It's schmoopy as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thumbs up going into the lava.
So good. So good. He knows now why you cry, Ben. But it's something he can never do.
Yeah, we'll do an episode about Terminator.
Yeah, I think it could be either way.
If they come up with a really good idea, I'll be in the theater.
Yeah.
If they probably don't even come up with a really good idea, I'll probably still be in the theater. Like these Dawn and War bought enough goodwill from me that these are now on the like I'm watching for news.
Yeah.
And I don't really do that for a lot of movies anymore. But I am excited to see. I'm excited to see what Matt Reeves does next.
Yeah. Batman.
Really?
I think he's directing the standalone Batman movie after Justice League. Ha! Now you gotta watch Batman.
Now I gotta watch a fucking comic book movie. Oh shit. Planet of the Apes, what have you done to me? I used to have principles.
Yeah. What have you done to me?
I am like Koba.
Yeah.
I like comic book movies.
So what else do we have to say about it before we...
my total wrap up on the trilogy is that the really special thing that these movies do is they depict what this is a subject that fascinates me. What the lives of early Homo sapiens were like. I read a really great book about it last year, and I've been thinking about it ever since. What were these people's lives like? These people who were us. They brains and everything. They were exactly like us in all their physical abilities, maybe a little shorter. I don't know. They had some superficial differences, but they lived in communities. They had lives. They had interpersonal drama. They struggled with inner demons. They struggled with trauma. They struggled with all this stuff. They just never left a record of it.
Yeah.
Right? So we kind of disregard them. They started leaving records about it, say, like 6,000-7,000 years ago, really concrete stuff. Before that, you can go back and see a lot of religious art or things that we assume are religious art. It might have just been like, I saw this weird tree that looked kind of like a cat with a human head, and I recreated it on the wall. And it's like, what an incredible early religious symbol. They must have thought that people and animals were not that different, or that an animal with human qualities was something to really revere or be frightened of. It's like, nah, I saw a boulder that looked like this. It just made
cool.
It just made me think, what would it be like if a moose had human legs? Yeah, I don't know. I think about this stuff a lot. But one of the great successes of Dawn and War and Rise as a setup for those movies is that it shows us a typical, straightforward, by the numbers, human post-apocalyptic movie. That's the human side. But it also shows us this story about the people. I keep calling the apes people because they're people. No, they're not humans, but they are people. About these people who are starting what will eventually grow into the next great civilization. That's what makes the name Dawn kind of make the most sense for that movie, is because it really is the dawn of a new era of sapient life on Earth. I don't know. And you see these two things clashing. You see like the differences between what we what we suppose early hominids might have lived their lives like that the scene at the beginning of Dawn was where he really fell in love with it. The opening scene, the hunting scene, when we actually get to see like what archaeologists, paleontologists have suggested may have been the hunting strategies of early man. Yeah. They get in a big group and they chase these elk, right? Are they elk? I don't know if I can remember. Deer or something. Yeah. Some kind of four-legged furry animals, some of whom have antlers. They chase them so that only the weak ones die and the strong ones are left with the herd. You never call the entire herd. You just call out the ones that are weak enough that your tactics take them out.
Yeah.
So that the herd gets stronger and you have food to eat. It's a great hunting strategy. It's really fucking smart. It's the kind of thing that maybe if we could all get together and work like that on, say, global warming, we might actually have a fucking chance. But it's looking more and more like that's not going to happen. So whatever.
So god damn it.
So okay. Fuck it. Whatever. Nothing matters. Hopefully,
let's just burn coal because fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. The coal's never coming back, guys.
That's a common theme in this. Yeah. Man, fuck coal. But as I was saying,
getting to seeing that was a priority for this movie. Seeing that depicting these apes not as a stand-in for the Native Americans, not as a stand-in, at least not as a direct stand-in for any of these other groups, the Native Americans, black people in America, or what's the other one people always bring up? I don't know. There are all kinds of relations to there are all kinds of allusions rather to race relations or to the early colonization in general, I guess. But it's not a direct comparison. The apes are not meant to stand in for any one of these groups. They're kind of a mix of all of them, right? They become Jews in the third movie. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that's interesting about the first franchise is that it's basically just apes or white people, and humans become how we treated black people, and
in the era of slavery.
It's and even it gets up even into like I think by the third or maybe the fourth one is a very like civil rights era esque film where they have like they give apes lowly jobs like custodial work and are mean to them and treat them poorly. Yeah. And I think it's good. It works both ways for me because I think it's good that they didn't do that so heavy-handedly. And
heavy-handed is the right. It's like those old Planet of the Apes movies are from like the 60s and 70s. Yeah. It was a different time for film. Things that look really heavy-handed now were kind of groundbreaking at the time.
And I think that I hope that at least the new trilogy makes you think about your camp, and kind of points out like that everybody deserves kind of a chance to be cool. Like there's probably not a very eloquent way to say that, but I think it made me question. Not like I'm like a racist that hated black people and now I don't, but that's not the case.
Planet of the Apes never cured my racism.
Yeah. Love that. I just think that I hope that it can help to make people question things about their own society,
question their reality.
Yeah. Of am I right? Am I on the right side about the way I think about question everything. Yeah. And I hope that it maybe serves that purpose.
It would be cool. It would be cool. I agree with you. It's not as heavy-handed as it might have been if it was made 30 years ago. It's more than standing in for any of those groups that I was talking about. They are standing in for all of our common ancestors, the very early humans that set up the civilizations. That there's a direct line of descent going straight from early hominids, early Homo sapiens that like hunted deer together and formed early religions, all the way up to us sitting in this room with like pop culture memorabilia all around us, with like shelves full of art.
That's what I worship.
And walls covered with art. Us recording a podcast in here. There's a direct line of descent between those two things. And I think War for the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes both do an excellent job of making us think about, like, okay, how did we get from there to here? What good things are still being reflected about the early structures and forms of communal life, and what parts have we maybe gone away from a little bit?
Yeah. Well, and that exactly, like, what went wrong. What things do we have that we think make us so great that now, looking at them next to each other, we don't have a lot of these good qualities that the so-called savages, or whatever you want to call them, have still.
What it made me think about, to get personal, what it made me think about was the way that not just individuals can experience trauma, but whole groups of people can experience trauma, and how that trauma can get coded into what people teach each other, what people teach upcoming generations, and what aura those communities put out into the world around them. I'm being very non-specific because I'm really not trying to make an allusion to any specific group, but just like, what the specific moment from the movie that made me think about that was when their first law is ape not kill ape. The first commandment that God hands down to people in the Tanakh is thou shalt not kill. So you can see, I hadn't really thought before about how that commandment wasn't made up by just one person.
Yeah.
At some point, a group of people, a group of early Israelites, maybe even pre-Israelites, maybe even people that the Israelites just absorbed at some point, but whatever the case may be, those early humans from thousands and thousands of years ago, something happened that made them think, fuck, we need to not kill each other.
That's the number one rule.
Number one rule.
Yeah.
Don't kill each other. Don't kill other people. Yep. Right? And we need to write that down, and we need to essentially build a religion around that.
We need to make sure that the people in the future know not to do that, and we'll save a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah. And it was pretty crazy
that kill a lot of people.
That like a summer blockbuster got me thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for that, I love War for the Planet of the Apes. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I loved it too. I think overall it was fantastic on its own, and I think it was a great entry to a possible trilogy / new franchise.
/ fucking more, whatever, the Planet of the Apes cinematic universe.
I mean, I guess that's about it.
I guess that's it. Yeah, I think we're done.
I just realized while we were recording earlier, we didn't even decide what the next episode was going to be.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about it yet.
I don't know what we should do.
I feel like we have some ideas written down. Do we want to do another music one?
Yeah, we can do music.
I don't know. I don't really know if there's anything coming out that we want to talk about. You know what we could do? But would this be too big for one episode? We could do an episode about Tom Waits. We haven't really done any music retrospectives yet, like going deep back into people's catalogs. Maybe we could pick an era of Tom Waits.
I'm actually pretty deep into some Tom Waits this week. So
yeah. What era do you think we could do it about? Because he goes through phases.
Yeah,
he goes through stages. There's like the early Lounge Lizard type stuff.
I don't know. It's hard to.
What about he has that great supposed trilogy of albums, the one that has Bone Machine in it.
Was it Rain Dogs, Bone Machine,
and Swordfish Trombones?
Yeah.
I think I might be fucking that up.
No, I think that sounds right.
Yeah,
the old Island Records. Yeah. I was actually just counted yesterday because I bought is it Spare Change, Loose Change? Which album is it? Whichever one. I have 17 Tom Waits albums. I was like, I didn't even know he had that many. I don't even have them all. I was like, what the fuck? Let's do some Tom Waits.
We'll do some Tom Waits. Not exactly sure what of Tom Waits we're going to talk about.
So brush up on the following 20 albums.
Yeah, listen to Tom Waits' entire career.
Yeah. You're going to hear some straightforward, loungy jazz, and then you're going to hear
a lot of bullhorn stuff.
Yeah, a lot of drunken jazz music, and then some real weird stuff.
Yeah,
but
weird
still
things
kind
are
of
going to start happening.
And then weirder stuff.
Yeah, things are going to get kind of abstract for a while.
And now he's just a grumbly goblin. Yeah. So that's gonna wrap it up, I guess. We'll do some Tom Waits stuff,
or maybe a video game thing. I don't know. We did Vince Staples last episode. We're not gonna.
you guys just aren't gonna be able to. We'll surprise you.
We'll
with the
see
next
what.
episode.
We'll see what we want to do.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, I forgot to give my little shout outs that I usually do at the beginning of the show. If you are subscribed to Black Gold Podcast, you will see that I did another episode of my podcast with Mike that's on the same feed. I feel like I have a weird branding issue with because my other show is called Black Gold Podcast, and so is the channel feed. Mm-hmm. And now this is the main. This is the main thing we do on it. So
I don't think it's confusing people. I think people get it.
Mike and I got together and we ranked every actor that has portrayed Batman. So that is up now. You can listen to that. I am also going to be on the next episode of Into the Cave podcast. I did another guest spot on that the other day, so you can check that out. Please listen to our podcast, Ben and Kurt Till It Hurts, which you've just been listening to us ramble about for 2 hours. We're on iTunes and BuzzFeed. Buzzsprout. We're not on BuzzFeed. Damn
it. Not yet.
Ben, I'm just going to shut this thing down. We'll start the whole thing over.
We've really clarified our thoughts about Planet of the Apes for ourselves by this point.
We can really get this 2-hour block down to a half-hour chunk.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KurtCake5K. And Ben, you need like Instagram. I mean, you don't need Instagram, but
I've been thinking about.
You
Twitter.
Make me sound like a loser when I'm the only one that has. I have 2, outlets, and you don't have any.
I'm gonna start tweeting. I've been tagging. I
don't even know how to. I'm gonna start tweeting.
I'm gonna overhaul my fucking Twitter account. I'm gonna actually start like.
You don't have to. Don't feel pressured into it.
No, it's not. It's not pressure. I've been getting into a lot of like YouTube video game criticism personalities, and a lot of them have Twitters that they update very regularly, and as I'm interested in getting more and more into that world, into that side of criticism, kind of rediscovering like my teenage love of video game reviews that think way too much, quote unquote way too much, because it's impossible to think too much about video games. Any amount that you think is appropriate.
I want to like just make the awful choice to if you like what we do, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. You can also check out what I'm doing on Reddit, and then like give our private Reddit usernames. Like,
oh man, I want to give out my Reddit username and password. Is what I want to do. Take that thing away from me. I've been getting into some arguments on Reddit.
You can read Ben's weird arguments. You can look at all the weird porn that I watch. It'll be a great time for you.
Yeah, no porn on mine, but yeah, username Ubenpo.
Oh wow, I would never give mine out.
OU Ben P.O. Come at me.
I'm like creeping on you now. Like, I want to read these arguments.
Do it.
So yeah, that's gonna be it.
I stand behind everything on that account.
We'll be back next time with something else. It'll be like the olden days when we used to talk about Resident Evil 4 and
that was a great episode.
Not let people know what we were going to talk about until we already did it.
Fuck them. They'll see it in the title of the episode.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.